And like, The Lion King's a pretty good movie, and I mean, from a psychological perspective, it devolves into propaganda from time to time. That happens now and then in Disney films, but you know, it's still a work. It's a work of genius, which is why you will know it. This is where you get your religion. Okay, so that's an archetypal image, and they open with it, right? So it's the dawn of consciousness. So it's the new day, but it's also the dawn of consciousness. It's the dawn of consciousness because you're a visual creature. And it's also the dawn of consciousness because you wake up in the morning. So it's like sun, rise, light, dawn of consciousness. And then the music is a celebration of that. And you can feel it. It grips you right away. I mean, that part of the music is really, really nice. I think that's the... Is that the gospel singers from South Africa? I think it is. The guys that played with Paul Simon, I think so. They're great. Okay, so what are all the animals doing all of a sudden? And they're waking up and they're paying attention to a call, right? And the call is musical. So then the question is, well, what's music? Well, music is a representation of like the dynamic patterns of things. And so you get all this complex information that's going on right off the bat. Consciousness dawns, and now there's a call. And everything that's sentient is to pay attention to the call. That's pretty good for like 5 seconds of film. So now there's, the filmmakers hit you with a whole succession of very beautiful images, and you know, they do that with a very beautiful music that's underneath, and that's to put you like in a state of harmony with, well, not only with nature, but with your own conceptions of nature and your sense of aesthetics. And it works quite nicely. It pops you into a dream very quickly.
From the day we arrive on the planet, and blinking step into the sun, there's more to see than can ever be seen, more to do than can ever be done. There's far too much to take in here, more to find than can ever be found. But the sun rolling high through the sapphire sky keeps great and small on the endless round.
Okay, so there's a lot going on there. So the lyrics are quite interesting because the lyrics are making representation to that state of being that I talked to you about, that William James had experienced, say, with his nitrous oxide visions, but that also that Piaget and the constructivists sort of think about as the ground of being. So, you know, the lyricist made a case that what surrounds you is informative to a degree that you will never be able to comprehend it. And the implication under that is that, you know, at least one of the ways of construing the ground of experiential being is as an information-rich matrix. And the music is pushing you in that direction too, because the music is a representation of what that information-rich matrix is like. Because it's patterned and complex, but understandable, and it also evokes emotion. So that's reality. And there's a lot of paradise imagery in here too, because it's sort of like all these animals they're all doing the same thing, and they're sort of existing in harmonies, like this elephant's covered with birds. And so in a way, it's a childish view of the world, because, you know, those elephants are covered with ticks, and, you know, the lions are half starved because it's been a drought. And, you know, it's not so good out there on the African plains. It's not all, you know. That'll teach me. Okay, so But they're getting you in the mood. Now, the lyricist also made reference to the fact that there's a paradise, there's an element of Genesis in the lyricism, because she talks about our arrival on the earth, so to speak, and then the dawning of consciousness, which is this step into the sun. And so that's an archetypal motif. We're placed on earth, well, here we are after all, and poof, we woke up. And the reason that's an archetypal idea is because that's what happens to everybody. Right? Poof! You're placed on the earth. Bang! One day you wake up. It's like the eternal experience of human beings, and there's something that's deeply real about it.
It's the circle of life.
Now that was cool. So we better watch that. We better watch that again.
It's the circle of life.
So that's a revelation, right? And so that's a very sneaky bit of the camera work. So, first of all, your vision is obscured, but then it's directed by the motion to this, like, place. What's that? Well, that's a good question. It's what? And just what exactly is Pride Rock? That's right. The rock is where the king is. That's right. That's the top of the pyramid. Now remember those trees I showed you from the shaman? It's so cool. I just figured this out the other day. Inside that tree there was a mountain, and the mountain was surrounded by a snake. You remember that? There's a circle with a snake around it. That's exactly the structure of this Lion King setup. You remember that? So you got the mountain in the middle there. What's on the outside? Hyenas, that's right. The chaos is out there where the light won't touch. Right? It's a perfect representation of the Scandinavian world tree. So cool. So okay, now, obviously, you and other animals are supposed to lift up your eyes, which is what the filmmaker made you do, and focus on this thing. It's a rock. What is a rock? What does a rock stand for?
Balance?
Hmm?
Balance and like structure?
Yes, exactly. Why? Balance, it's structure. Why? Why is a rock a good metaphor for that?
Because it's a solid. So
That's right.
it's not
Rocks, they're strong. Even in an earthquake, if you're lucky, they won't liquefy. So you want to stand on a rock. Right. The question is, what kind of rock do you want to stand on? And that's exactly. Is it a physical rock? That's one way of looking at it. Or is there a metaphysical rock that's even a better rock? Well, that's partly what this film investigates. But at the moment, there's a rock. It's been there forever. And the king has been there forever. And the king is the thing at the top of the dominance hierarchy, which is why you lift up your eyes to it. And the king here is a lion. Why does that make sense? Lions aren't kings, after all. But it makes sense. Why?
because they're at the top.
They're at the top of the food chain. Okay, so that's a good one. Any other possible reasons? Yes?
Maybe the mane sort of represents a regal authority.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, definitely. And the animators capitalize on that all the time. And they're kind of noble looking, because they're muscular, and plus they could eat you. Right, so that sort of indicates that there are certain circumstances under which you are at the bottom of the hierarchy, and the lion is in fact at the top. So, because a lion is also an awe-inspiring beast. Like, the shepherds in the Old Testament, around that time, a shepherd, you think, well, shepherd, he's dressed this little frilly hat, and he's not much of a powerhouse at all. But those guys used to fight off lions. It's like, that's you got to be really tough to fight off a lion with a stick, So, yeah. So anyways, okay, so there's the rock, and the sun is shining on it, and what are the animals doing? Gathering around the rock. Now, we accept that as a narrative possibility, right? You're not sitting there thinking in the theater, what the hell are those animals doing gathering around the rock? And the fact that you're not sitting there thinking that is an indication that you're following the archetypal trail of the story. It makes sense to you that a diverse bunch of drawings of animals would, come together around a rock. That makes sense. Why? Well, it has something to do with our dominance hierarchy proclivity and the fact that we can recognize an authority structure, and we know how to interact with it. And so these aren't animals, after all. They're people. Well, they're not, because they're drawings, but they're certainly not animals. They're not acting like animals. So, or they're acting like half human, half animals.